This is Susan Phelan for Utah Book Scene, and I have Anne Serling here with me today. Welcome, Anne.
Thank you so much.
Anne, you have written a book called As I Knew Him, My Dad, Rod Serling. Could you tell us, I love both memoirs and biographies, and tell me where this falls on that line, because they're similar.
I would say primarily it's more of a memoir about growing up with my dad. It does touch on his professional life as well, but it's more about growing up with him and who he was as a dad.
And we don't know him as the dad. We think of him as the guy on Twilight Zone. Although I know he's done so many things. In fact, I just found out he did the first Planet of the Apes. He wrote that, didn't he?
He wrote the ending.
Oh, okay.
He was the original writer brought on, and then it was too expensive to produce, so that another writer was brought on, and he did write the ending of that.
And Planet of the Apes is a wonderful movie. Now, Twilight Zone was, for me, when I was little, was really too scary. So I imagine at the time you didn't know that much about what your dad did.
I didn't know. I knew that my dad was a writer, but I didn't know exactly what he was writing. And it wasn't until some mean boy on the playground asked me if I was something out of the Twilight Zone that I went home and I asked my dad what that meant, and he explained he wrote for a series that it was probably too scary for me. And it was a few years later I watched the episode Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. And even though my dad hadn't written that episode, it was terrifying to me to see my dad, coming at the beginning of the show, because this was so remotely distant from the father that I knew.
Okay, so that brings us to the father you knew. Can you tell us some about your growing up and what he was to you?
My dad was, first off, brilliantly funny. He was, without a doubt, the funniest person I've ever known. He would do anything for a laugh. He was a practical joker. For instance, he would, I have a propensity to laugh when I'm nervous, and he would take advantage of that and make me laugh during weddings or inappropriate situations. Getting into an elevator, he would tell me a joke right before the elevator doors opened. He would disappear and reappear in my lampshade, and just everything. He was very funny and very warm.
And I understand that he passed away when you were 20. That must have been really a difficult experience.
I actually had just turned 20 2 weeks before he died, and we really, even though open heart surgery at that point was very new, we really felt that he would survive the surgery and he would be fine. And needless to say, he wasn't. But it took me really decades to come to terms with my grief about losing my dad, which was in part the impetus in writing this book, to work through it.
So you think writing the book was kind of a catharsis for you?
Absolutely. I think in the same way that my dad's writing was for him.
Now, tell me, before we close, what did you get from your father after you've had years of reflection now, and we all get different things from our parents? What do you think was his legacy to you?
Well, I guess being able to express myself in writing. I think also I parent the way that he parented, unconditional love. Feel passionate about things that he felt passionate about, prejudice and, the evils of the world. And I like a good laugh too.
Now, you have some beautiful lyrical writing in here. And you actually wrote some poetry, didn't you?
Yes. Before I started the writing memoirs, I wrote poetry.
I could tell that in just reading it. Would you read us a little bit, please?
Sure. The man I knew, my dad, was not the one the public saw. Not this black and white image walking slowly across an MGM soundstage, cigarette in hand, speaking in a tight, clipped voice, introducing that week's episode. Not the angry young man of the golden age of TV, not the writing professor, the documentary narrator, or the commercial pitchman, and certainly not the dark and tortured soul some have suggested. In Twilight Zone reruns, I search for my father in the man on the screen, but I can't always find him there. Instead, he appears in unexpected ways, memories summoned by a certain light, a color, a smell, and I see him again on the porch of our old red lakeside cottage, where I danced on the steps as a child. He will emerge, come back to life, just like the old snapshot in the album, just like the day the shutter clicked and the picture froze. There he is, playing the stone game, holding it tucked into one hand behind his back. I am one of the children there, his youngest daughter. I see us in our summer shorts, barefoot, all lined up in rows, my sister, our friends, our tiny sunburned shoulders touching, guessing which hand holds the stone, moving down a step, closer, closer to my father, who waits to shake the winner's hand. I think of his Twilight Zone episode, A Stop at Willoughby, a simple, serene time imagined through a train window, a day just like this. On a summer afternoon, the wind blows hot, humid air, and for just a fraction of a moment, my father, all of us are there.
That is lovely. Thank you so much, Anne. This is Anne Serling that we've been interviewing with her new book, and let me show the cover again for everyone. As I Knew Him, My Dad, Rod Serling. It came out in April of 2013, and this is Susan Phelan for Utah Book Scene. What are you reading?